Instead of going game by game, I want to look at every single player that we have to update our rankings with and really talk about what we should expect over the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to be talking about guys like Christian McCaffrey, where yes, CMC was at 1 before, he is still at 1, and he's still going to make me cry with the fact that I was drafting Justin Jefferson over him. Still have CMC in a few leagues, but dear God, I could have taken this guy at the 101 in every league and just been printing money. It is brutal. But I want to go over to the Lions trifecta here, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, looking at Goff, Gibbs, and Sam Laporta coming off a massive blow-up week against Denver. They dropped 42 points. Jared Goff has 5 passing touchdowns. And ultimately, they won you your week if you were built around the Detroit Lions stack. Now, if I am going to be looking at Goff, do we change our rankings of him? Nope. I think he's still low in quarterback 1 based off matchup. You can go ahead and you can play him going forward. It was a great matchup going up against Denver. I should have had him ranked higher in my rankings. I was an idiot for not doing so. But if you're looking at the rushing upside, he's had 21 rushing yards this year. So it is very difficult to compete with those other quarterbacks that are sitting at 400, 500 rushing yards this season. I don't necessarily think he can really work himself up anything higher than a low in QB1. Going over to Gibbs, I was asked a Sunday morning on a live stream, who would we rather have rest of season, Gibbs or Bijan Robinson? Coming off the Jahmyr Gibbs 2-touchdown game against Denver. And I sat there and went, I don't know. Bijan has a great schedule. I'm an idiot. Jahmyr Gibbs looks phenomenal. Jahmyr Gibbs does have the receiving role. He has 60 targets so far this season. Dominating with the efficiency as well. 5.7 yards per carry. Looks to be one of the better dynamic running backs in the NFL that you have in terms of players that can both catch the ball and run it. I have Gibbs currently ranked at RB7 in our rankings this week. So I do have Jahmyr Gibbs ranked as a mid RB1 going forward. Sam Laporta drops 3 receiving touchdowns. I already had Sam Laporta ranked as our tight end 2 overall last week. So maybe with Laporta, the craziest freaking thing ever is, and I would love to know your opinion on this in the comment section. Can we put Sam Laporta at 1 now over Kelsey? Is that something you are doing? I mean, if he was going to rise any higher, he would have to go 1. You can't move him up from 2. Now, speaking of Kelsey, let's go over to KC and let's look at Rashee Rice, who just continues to increase his snap share in this offense. This past week, he has 60 snaps out of 65 potential. According to PFF here, he has 38 routes run out of 41 potential. Rashee Rice is dominating the target volume over the past 4 months. 10, 9, 10, and 9 targets. Super safe option as we go through and rank our wide receivers for this upcoming week. I am probably going to have to go ahead and put Rashee Rice as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. I think we had him as a mid-wide receiver 2 last week, but if you're looking at that graph from PFF, if he's going up in snap rate, we are going to have to keep him moving up in our rankings. Now, Addison will be someone that has a bigger game than what Rice just had, but honestly, I'm not moving Addison anywhere. He had 111 receiving yards, multiple receiving touchdowns. It's beautiful. He did it off of 6 targets. Crazy efficiency that will come back down to earth. Jefferson did dominate with target volume. TJ Hawkinson is still here. So Addison still going to be competing for targets in an offense led by Nick Mullins. So while Addison was great, if you had him in underdog tournaments this past week, very happy for you. I'm personally not going to go out there and be moving Addison up our rankings too much at all. Now, David Njoku will be our next guy. And with Njoku, another player similar to Rashee Rice, how much higher can he move? I don't know. I think David Njoku has to be considered as like a borderline top 3 tight end at this point. After this week, he cracks over 100 total targets on the season. And more importantly, if you're looking at what we've had over the past 6-ish weeks, 9 targets, 15, 9, 6, 8, and now 14 targets. Over the past 6, 7, 8 weeks, he's averaging over 10 targets a game. Obviously, the touchdowns are nice, but underlying those touchdowns, more importantly, the target volume is there. Really, the only guy that wasn't flooding him with targets was Deshaun Watson. So I think David Njoku penciled in to be a top 3 tight end over the next few weeks. Chris Godwin will be someone that I do need to talk about. He had 12 targets this game, which is great, right? But we've seen him have 12 targets before. We've seen him have 11 targets before. I mean, this is fourth time having a game with 11 or 12 targets. The target volume's been there for Chris Godwin all season. If you drafted Godwin, which I don't have a lot of Godwin, but I have some of them, I think you actually made a pretty good pick in this year's fantasy drafts. Ultimately, Baker Mayfield's been great. With Godwin, this is just a situation where he has been extremely unlucky when it comes to his touchdown rate, where Godwin has had 108 targets so far this season and 1 receiving touchdown. It's like an all-time run bad situation for Godwin here. I mean, if you just start scoring soon, it would be great. It's just not happening. I don't know if we can rank Godwin anything higher than a low-end wide receiver 2, which if you are one of the best teams in your league, which you have to be to still be watching videos in week 16, I don't know how excited you are to go through and start him. Now, James Cook is a player that if you started this past week, you just won your matchup straight up. James Cook over 200 total yards. James Cook multiple touchdowns. 25 carries this game. I didn't know if you would ever see a game with 25 carries from James Cook, but here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Dominating with efficiency as well. Now over 5 yards per carry on the season. Consistently getting that target volume. He has 40 receptions on the year. I just made our running back rankings for this week. I have James Cook as a top 5 running back. Right now I'm debating on if we should have him at 3, 4, or 5. Especially with this Los Angeles Chargers matchup. I mean, you have a 28-29 point implied team total here for the Bills. So it is so tough to go out there and have James Cook anything lower than RB4 or RB5 at the latest. Now, Kupp will be someone that we briefly talk about. With Cooper Kupp, back-to-back massive games here. 111 receiving yards, 115 2 weeks ago against Baltimore. Now we can safely say, okay, Kupp was just injured in the middle part of the year. I mean, if you're looking at what you had from his first 2 games, 118, 148 with his receiving yards. Past 2 weeks, 115, 111 with his receiving yards. Everything in between that, just absolute garbage. I think that it's safe to say, yes, you are okay to go through and bet on Cooper Kupp as a low-end wide receiver 1 rest of season, even though that's not to take anything away from Puka, and Puka's been great in his own right. Now, the last player that I really want to be moving up rankings is Devin Singletary, where if you're looking at this graph from PFF, Dameon Pierce is just Dunskies. I mean, Dameon Pierce no longer involved in this offense. 3 weeks ago, we kind of thought he was trending back in the direction of getting involved. I mean, if you're looking at that graph from PFF, you'll see the snap rates. But no, Singletary, full-blown workhorse. He has a total of 58 snaps in this game. Could have had a bigger stat line if his final rushing touchdown didn't get called back due to holding, which didn't really impact the play too much. But 121 rushing yards, 49 receiving yards, every single snap, every single touch. It's a true 3-down bell cow. Right now, I have him ranked at RB 17 in our rankings because it's a tough matchup going up against Cleveland. But I am debating on honestly moving him up a little bit higher than this as well. Now let's pivot over to some players falling down rankings. Hopefully this guy's not going to fall. DeAndre Swift, we get to see him play tonight. Hopefully Ertz plays. But what I do know is he's hitting a yard on Underdog, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want that more than less than half a total yard on Underdog for DeAndre Swift, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, get a 100% deposit match, plus that DeAndre Swift special pick of more than less than half a total yard, and our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. My favorite Underdog pick right now to pair up that Swift one with will be Dallas Goedert for fewer than 44.5 receiving yards. Now, moving over to Bijan Robinson. This is the most painful thing that we have to look at. I was so excited all season. Oh, I was waiting for the fantasy football playoffs. And that Bijan was finally going to be going up against the Carolina Panthers. Beautiful matchup where the Panthers are at the very top of the NFL in points allowed to opposing running backs. The final stat line for Bijan Robinson: 7 carries, 11 rushing yards, 3 receiving yards. If you look at the involvement from Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson, Patterson steals the touchdown. Tyler Algier still, it's so damn frustrating. The usage is gone. I mean, we've seen Arthur Smith kind of go back and forth with these guys. I think we have to move Bijan down from the pipe dream of being a top 5 running back, which clearly is not, to more so being a high-end RB2, which hopefully we're hoping for a bounce back here. Austin Eckler will be falling even further than that, ladies and gentlemen. I think Eckler is now in the category of looking like a high-end RB3, potentially a low-end RB2. So running back to this past week, 5 carries, 9 rushing yards, 4 receptions, 29 receiving yards. Now, why I'm not just completely out on Austin Eckler, despite this offense looking like a complete train wreck, is the coaching staff may come in and go, okay, I have to prove myself in some capacity. This is the only shot I'm going to get. Let's make these 3 games look good. Maybe they heavily rely on Eckler. Maybe you see them decide to pivot away from Isaiah Spiller, pivot away from Joshua Kelly. But I mean, Eckler's been inefficient all season now. I mean, he's averaging about 5.5 yards per target and averaging about 3.6 yards per carry. But the fundamental thing is this is just one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And someone else playing one of the worst offenses in the NFL is Saquon Barkley. With Saquon Barkley, 9 carries, 14 rushing yards, 2 receptions, 23 receiving yards. More concerningly, if you're looking at the underlying snaps that you have, fallen off the face of the planet. I mean, you have Saquon Barkley not getting involved on every 3rd down as you previously saw. So I don't necessarily know how we can sit here and we can say, oh, okay, Saquon Barkley is still a must-start player when he's in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And now he's no longer seeing the same kind of snap share that he did previously. I'm going to be ranking Saquon Barkley as like a mid to low-end RB2 this next week. It is a very tough matchup against Philly. But the reality is, if you have Barkley, if you have Eckler, if you have Bijan, you're probably not having to worry about submitting a starting lineup this next week because you probably lost round 1 of your playoffs. But I think that's all we have for you in this video. I'm not going to do a waiver wire video today. There's nobody exciting on the waiver wire. And if you made it this far, you don't need waiver wire options. But if you have not done so, hit that like. And if you want to check out our videos through the course of the offseason, I'm not going to be uploading here. Not going to bother you with that just because I know the majority of y'all don't care about fantasy football in the offseason. But I love Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I'm going to be talking about fantasy football all offseason on the Dynasty Football Flock YouTube channel. That's how I got started on YouTube. My favorite way to play fantasy football is Dynasty. So yeah, if you're interested in following us through the offseason, look up Dynasty Football Flock on YouTube. You can find it there. And outside of that, if you wanted to check out that DeAndre Swift special pick'em for Monday night, you can get more than less than half a total yard with promo code FLOCK on Underdog, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers with that link in both the description and the comment section. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day and hope I get to see you in the live stream later tonight.